Okay, so I'm gonna try something. I want you to tell me if y'all can hear this, okay?
By the early 19th century, the U.S. was rapidly growing, both in size and power. Land-hungry and ambitious, the new country was also drastically changing its policies towards the Indian nations. And nowhere was this more evident than in the treaties.
The United States' primary interest in treaty making was to acquire Indian land. And so the treaties were used for that purpose, especially as the United States found itself in a position to pretty much dictate the terms of the treaty. And so the treaties morphed from this friendship and reciprocity sort of relationship into a very one-sided thing.
There's almost a mythology about this, that somehow when the Pilgrims arrived, they were dragging land behind them. There was no land brought here. The land here was Native nations. And this is what the United States needed. It's what it wanted. They wanted all of it. They wanted everything.
The greed came in. Well, we have a little tract here now we need a little more. And well, we need to go make another treaty. We didn't understand that eventually those treaty-making processes ended up to the acquisition of all of our ancestral homeland. That land was a part of us. That land helped us be. That land was who we were and who we are.
The command of removal came unexpectedly upon most of us. There was a time that we noticed several overloaded wagons were passing our home, yet we did not grasp the meaning. Then one day, wagons stopped. We were to be taken away and leave our homes, never to return.
To get what they wanted, U.S. officials brokered treaties through any means available. Their tactics were so corrupt that the once trusted treaties became quickly known as bad paper.
There were people at these treaty negotiations who would do anything to get an agreement on the table. And so there was very routinely bribery, individual payments made to tribal leaders. Alcohol would be used to put people in an agreeable frame of mind, and even coercion to say to people, you must sign this agreement or else.
Every means of trickery and fraud was employed against Native nations. The United States would appoint a false leadership, people who had no right to speak for the tribe, and say, you're the leader of this tribe, sign this paper giving away all your land.
As the century progressed, the treaties became more and more lopsided, a far cry from the parallel paths of the Goswenta. Despite appeals from the Indian nations, the U.S. kept on its new trajectory, rationalizing its aggressive actions along the way.
They have neither the intelligence, the industry, the moral habits, nor the desire of improvement. The tribes of Indians inhabiting this country were fierce savages. To leave them in possession of their country was to leave the country a wilderness.
It's important in the great American mythology to describe the Americas as wilderness. Because if it's wilderness, then there's really nobody to dispossess. It was okay to come here and prosper and conveniently forget that there were already people and civilizations in place.
At first we had something to eat, but that gave out and we were starving. We came to a slippery elm tree and ate the bark of that. Lots took sick and died.
As Americans successfully pushed the bounds of the frontier, they not only believed that they were destined to take over the land and prosper, they believed that God was the one who put them there to do it.
They believed that it was God's will, that the United States should be a continental nation stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific. As each wave of immigration would come, they'd move into an area. The United States would then make some sort of arrangement with the tribe to get that land from them. And then more would come, and they'd advance the frontier even further.
The power of manifest destiny, of expansion, of inevitability, of God's providence helped to rally people around not only the idea of Americans as entitled to North America, but rallied them around the idea that Indian people were barriers to civilization and barriers to progress.
No matter how many treaties were signed or how much land they gave to the United States, the Indian was still in the way. This was known as the Indian problem. This so-called problem continued despite a decades-old policy to force Indians to swap their land east of the Mississippi for land west of it. The Indians would then move to those western parts and away from the Americans. This plan was simply called removal.
The Removal Act was the centerpiece of Andrew Jackson's political agenda, and it was very controversial at the time. It was very widely debated. There was lots of discussion across the country, and very many prominent people spoke up against it.
Will the American government steal? Will it lie? Will it kill? I have no desire to see the poor remnants of a once powerful people. The removal bill represents oppression with a vengeance.
The removal process, it was, all right, you've made these treaties. Now, you can have one of two things. You can keep your sovereignty, but you can't keep your land. But if you keep your land, then you have to assimilate and no longer be Indian. You will have sovereignty or you have your land. You can't have both.
Across the United States, the Removal Act divided the country. But across the Indian nations, reaction was unanimous.
We are surrounded by white people, and there are encroachments made. What assurances have we that similar ones will not be made on us should we remove to the Mississippi? Look here, Father. Our lands belong to us. We shall keep them. We do not wish to talk to you anymore.
We had already been fighting to keep that land. And sure enough, when the government was coming in there to take us out of that land, we fought even more. But at some point, you have to realize that this fighting is all going to be about death. And death is coming. Then I need to be protecting my family, and I want my children to survive. So we have to endure this removal.
Many of the tribes did choose to accept removal as a means of maintaining the tribal nation. What choice was there? After decades of engagement, they could no longer resist. And so they gave up their lands, they gave up their homes, they gave up their fields and forests, they gave up literally their way of life in order to be able to stay together and be what they were.
We are poor, but we are free. No white man controls our footsteps.
Some tried to assimilate to avoid removal. Some were removed completely. But in the end, every nation met the same fate. Every nation had to give up land.
Brothers, you cannot remain where you are now. You have but one remedy within your reach, and that is to remove to the west. May the Great Spirit teach you how to choose.
The loss of land was devastating, and so was the loss of lives. The most famous of these incidents was the Cherokee Nation's Trail of Tears, but there were numerous other trails just as violent and just as crushing.
Everyone had to walk. My baby brother Joel was 4 years old. I was just 8, but I took my turn at carrying him because he could not walk much. I would get so tired I'd think I was going to die, but I would hang on to him. I was so afraid they would kill him. I saw them kill babies who were too big to be carried and would give out.
That really was a road of death. People were falling on the side of the road or being shot or being murdered on the road and being left there. The removal process was done in a way that was not efficient in making people survive.
Of the millions of Indian people that lived before the first colonists arrived, by the end of the 19th century, only 250,000 remained.
The removal of a tribe was certain to destroy all of the things they knew about taking care of themselves, all of their medicines, all of their foods. Everything about them had to change in order to survive. It can only be understood as an act of destruction.
When you move a people from one place to another, when you displace people, when you wrench people from their homelands, wasn't that genocide? We don't make the case that there was genocide. We know there was, yet here we are.
When we were forced to leave our land, we took the fires with us. We took the embers along. Then when we got to Oklahoma, we rekindled the old fire. Old home or new home, it is the same fire.
Okay, so what did y'all think about that? Was it kind of hard to watch? It's really sad, isn't it? Okay, so now, because you all read about Sitting Bull this week, I wanted you to meet the grandson of Sitting Bull. So this is a really short video, but he's going to talk just a little bit about a movie that they made and about his grandpa's life a little bit and sort of the things that they experienced.
This is my story. It's trying to awaken within the people. You know, people didn't like me because of the color of my skin. They never got to know who I am. I can't speak for them all. I can only speak for myself. You know, you get to know me. I'm not a bad person. I try to be positive in my thinking, and I try to express myself in a positive way. And the number one incident that's keeping these people around the world captured is the umbrella of fear. Fear is what causes racism. Fear is what causes greed. Fear is what causes everything in this world. People talk all these big words, carry guns, and want to be tough because they live under the umbrella of fear. You know, what really shocks me is I was talking to an elder one day about 30 years ago. He was probably in his 80s. And he was telling me about these people who had visions that they relayed to him. And he said one of the spirits came and told him, he said, all these natives that the Americans killed, he said there's over millions of them. The spirit's gonna come back in people that are not native. And through my life, I've met non-natives, blacks, whites, that have very, very much native feelings, thoughts, whether you know it or not. If you have a native spirit that lived in this continent before, you know, that's who I'm trying to target to awaken in their brain. Say, look, it's time to come out. We're going to be the teachers of the world, to come out from under this umbrella of fear and teach the goodness like we used to live.
I think you're muted.
I was just talking so much and nobody heard one thing that I said. Thanks for telling me that. So one of my favorite things about Sitting Bull and his people is the way that they used, if they killed an animal, they used all parts of that animal. So they didn't waste anything. So the little charm and string that you have in your bag, I want you all to use that to make a necklace. And that's actually buffalo bone. Those beads are actual bone. And so I just love that they didn't waste anything. They used, if they killed an animal, they used every part of it. And so this little video just talks a little bit more about that. And while you're watching it, you can put your necklace together if you want to.
Uses of the buffalo. The buffalo was the mainstay of the Sioux and played a very important role in their way of life. It provided for their every need: food, clothing, and shelter. Every part of the buffalo was used. Nothing was wasted. Some examples of what different parts of the buffalo were used for are the stomach and bladders were used for carrying water, storing objects, and cooking vessels. The horns were used as cups, ladles, and spoons. Bones were used for knives, arrowheads, and shovels. The hide was used for making clothing, footwear, pouches, bags, carriers. The hair was braided into rope. The tail made a great fly swatter, and their scat was used as a source of fuel.
Did you hear the last thing she said? They even use buffalo poop as a source of fuel. So that's pretty awesome. They use all the parts. So I'm gonna show you a little PowerPoint here, and you all have this in your folders to look at too. You don't have to look at it now, but you do have it if you want to look at it later. So they said in the video that this bison or buffalo was really one of the most important things that the Sioux Indians had. Did you all see anything about the buffalo in your book about Sitting Bull? Did they talk about it at all?
Cash would be 15.
A little bit, yeah, okay. So the Sioux Indians ate fruits, vegetables, roots, and nuts, and they also hunted animals for meat. So can y'all recognize any of these animals on here?
A rainbow one. I want the rainbow one. I want a rainbow one, Charlie.
See rabbits
I want it.
and wolves. So remembering that whatever animal they killed, they used all parts of it. So even if it was a tiny little rabbit or some kind of little animal, they used every part of the animal. And so if you think about how big a buffalo is, it's really, really important for them to have buffalo because it was a way to get a lot of food with one kill. And so there's a lot of meat on a buffalo that could feed a lot of their tribe. So what about the other parts of the buffalo? Whoa, that was crazy. So they didn't just throw that stuff away. They used it for lots of different things. And so they used it for, they used every part of the buffalo. They found a way to use all the different kinds. So what are some of the things that you think they might have done with bones or skin or hair or any of those things? Do you remember anything from the videos?
Mommy, that's it.
We're using a bone right now, right, to make some jewelry. Let's see what else they used. So they use the bones for things like knives and shovels and paintbrushes. They use horns for things like cups. So that's pretty smart, right? Like if you could use a horn, it's hollow inside, you could use it for a cup or a spoon. They also made toys. So Sioux Indians, just like you all, wanted toys to play with. They also use the skin. You can see different ways that that they use skin for different things. So they, like this drum, they use the skin and stretched it out to make a drum to play on. And then you can see these dolls, and that looks like a rug maybe, or something to wear. So they even used the hair of the buffalo you saw in the video, they braided it together to make a rope. And they even use things like their stomachs. So they could take their stomach and use it as like a way to carry water or something to cook in. Isn't that kind of wild that they used even their organs, like their stomach? They also even used the tail of the buffalo. So they used it for everything from fly swatters. You hear them say that the tail made a great fly swatter, things like whips and decorations. And so one of the things to think about is, you know, in our videos, we learned that white people didn't really treat the land the same way that the natives treated the land. And so you can see these pictures. When white people came in, they killed buffaloes by the millions. They sold their skins, and they didn't really take every piece of the buffalo like the natives did. And so you can see it during this time, it actually created a possibility for the buffalo to be extinct because so many were killed, and it almost made this animal not around anymore. So you can kind of see that in this picture too. All right, so how are your necklaces? Them up so we can see. Oh, I love it. So pretty. So some of the other things to think about, I know that some of your beads are colored. Do you think buffalo bones are colorful? Probably not. So how do you think they made them those colors? Think they got a Sharpie and colored them? Skylar.
They used buffalo fat and other colors. They mix it together to make paint.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Skylar said, flowers, like Hannah said, different things, even from the buffalo, and they mixed them to make paint or dye. Have you guys ever done like tie-dye before? Yeah, or even like colored Easter eggs? Kind of that same thing. Like you can color those things. So it's not necessarily that buffalo bones are all these awesome red and blue and green colors, but they also use things from nature to dye their beads. So they could have a colorful necklace or even clothes to wear or whatever. So all right, who can tell me one thing they learned about Sitting Bull or about Native Americans this week? Don't make me pick people. Skylar.
I didn't know that they like did sun dances to get visions.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting things that they believe about the world and about spirits and different things. Lots and lots of cool different ideas that they had. Who else learned something this week? Madeline.
I learned a lot about his life.
Yeah. He was a pretty cool guy, wasn't he? Yeah. Definitely had kind of a sad story in a lot of ways. Anybody else learn anything this week?
The Indians were treated pretty bad back then.
Yeah, for sure. That's the hardest thing for me to think about or to learn about is just how badly they were treated. And again, making sure that we always make sure we don't do those things to people. Like we don't want to ever repeat history. Same way we talked about the Holocaust and those things that happened. We want to make sure that we are loving and inclusive of all people, and we don't ever let something like that happen again. Because yeah, it was really sad and a really, really hard time. So anybody else have anything they learned this week? Did you all know that they used all the parts of the buffalo? Did that surprise you? Most of you knew. Yeah, you didn't. Some of you didn't. Yeah. Do you think we do that today? Like, do you think when we eat chicken at McDonald's, they use all the parts of the chicken? Probably not, right? So I just love that about them, about the Native people, that they were so, it was so important to them to use what they had and use it well. Okay.